So I think all of these strategies need to be explored.
Excellent ideas. Thank you so much, Paul.
Good morning. So I will introduce my co-moderator, pravin dugel, that will speak about a new treatment, the new most promising drug in waiting 2020.
Thank you, Giovanni. Good morning to you all. My financial disclosures are here. I work with pretty much all the companies that I'll be talking about. I also want to acknowledge my very good friend and partner, Peter Kaiser, who I work with, but also I share all the talks and all the work with. So there's no doubt whatsoever that anti-VEGFs are the first line of treatment for wet macular degeneration. Let's just go back in time a little bit and think about how we got here. You remember that we had pegactinib, and we looked at inhibiting a ligand, which is VEGF-A, and then after that we had two other things, ranibizumab and bevacizumab, and then we did studies, and what we found out was that there didn't seem to be a whole bunch of difference between these drugs. And then we said, this must be a very complicated process. It can't just be VEGF-A. And then came another drug, which was aflibercept, and we said, well, this might work better because it does more than just VEGF-A. There's also VEGF-B and PLGF, and lo and behold, we were disappointed because the difference didn't seem to be that much. So the problems still remain, as good as these are. And here are the problems. The main problem, as Paul very nicely outlined, is that of sustainability. We simply cannot inject enough. We've got a treatment strategy that simply doesn't work anywhere. The other problem, of course, is that over the long term, patients gradually lose vision. Even if they're able to take these injections, they gradually lose vision. And here you have real-time data that shows that in the US, in all of these places where real-time data is kept, patients are getting sometimes less than half the number of injections. So again, despite how good these drugs are, I think of these three as either problems or better yet opportunities. One is to have better short-term efficacy, the other is to have better long-term efficacy, and the other is to have better sustainability. And what I'll confine myself to this morning, because of the time limit, is I'll talk to you about the next generation of anti-VEGF drugs. And what you will see is that of those three problems, the one that they tend to address is the last one, which is to provide us with greater sustainability. And what I'll show you today, because we have a massive number of really exciting drugs, I'll just confine myself to those drugs that are in phase 3. So ones which I think you should really know about, because there's a good chance that you'll be seeing them in your clinics. The first one I'll talk to you about is the first drug that potentially will be FDA approved from China. It's called Converset from Hanghang Biotech. And this will inhibit VEGF-A as well as VEGF-B as well as PLGF. Now, what's new about Converset? It's a fusion protein that has the introduction of an R2 domain 4 that will actually increase dimerization. We also know from this drug that this has the highest binding capacity of any anti-VEGF that we know. So remember, the dissociation constant is inverse to binding capacity, so very high binding capacity. Studies have been done in China that have been very encouraging. In fact, it's Chinese FDA approved and has been used for a couple of years in the treatment of wet macular degeneration, commercially available in China. The one that you may be more familiar with, the one that will be really first one approved in the next few months, is brolucizumab by Novartis. Again, the thing with brolucizumab is that it's a very, very small drug. It's a single-strand antibody fragment. Only the business ends are used. Difficult to make drug, but a very small drug, so that a lot of the drug can go in. In fact, 11 to 13 times more the molar concentration than aflibercept. I think you're familiar with the studies. The Hawk and Harrier studies were the pivotal studies that were done. The primary endpoint was met, that of non-inferiority, and this continued to the end of the study. Remember, the primary endpoint was met with 50% or so of patients being treated Q12. Although the visual acuity was non-inferior, the OCT was not. In fact, regardless of how one looks at the OCT, either in Hawk or in Harrier in this case, the OCT results were superior for brolucizumab. If you look at patients without intra or subretinal fluid. There are more such patients within the brolucizumab group than in the aflibercept group. And even in the harder to treat sub-RPE fluid, there were more patients who were fluid-free in the brolucizumab group versus the aflibercept group. So the Hawk and Harrier studies have now been published. The 2-year results also will be published soon. Another next generation anti-VEGF is the Vicapar-Pagol from Allergan. And this is a very interesting molecule because it's a continuation of a DARPin molecule. It's an infrastructure of DARPin, which is a naturally occurring designed anchoring protein. This also has a very high binding constant, as you can see over here. We know from the earlier study, the REACH studies, for instance, that it has a long capacity to last, so sustainability is very important. The phase 3 studies were done, and this is the press release. And the good news is that it's the only phase 3 study that I know of that was Q12 for all patients. So there was no disease activity assessment, there was no assessment of who was active and who wasn't. Everybody was put in one arm on Q12 after 2 loading doses, and it was successful. However, we also learned that the inflammation rate was quite high. It was over 15%. Following that, a manufacturing change was made, and another study was done called the MAPLE study, and we saw the press release of that. Now the inflammation rate had been lowered to 8.9%, but still quite high. And we've been told by Allergan that this inflammation is mild. There's also the ranibizumab port delivery system, which will be talked about by Professor Lowenstein later on today. Now, what about combination drugs? And I'll end with here. The one that you really need to know about is the angiopoietin pathway, and the drug is called faricimab. This is a more difficult to understand pathway, but very important to understand. What I want you to realize is that this pathway is not just an inhibition or non-inhibition pathway. There's Ang1, which is released in health. This keeps the blood vessel from leaking and keeps inflammation away. In times of disease, there's an upregulation of Ang2. Ang2 is a weak agonist, which effectively is the antagonist of Ang1. And what it does is that it competes for the same binding site. It causes leakage of vessels, it destabilizes the vessels, it causes more inflammation, and also upregulates VEGF-A. So importantly, Ang2 and VEGF-A work together. We know from studies that Ang1 is secreted at a basal level, and in times of disease, as I mentioned, it's Ang2 that's upregulated. So it makes sense then to have a drug that will both bind to Ang2 and VEGF-A at the same time. And that's what faricimab is. It used to be called RG7716. And this is a beautifully designed, very elegant drug that has 2 Fab arms. One is an anti-Ang2 arm, and the other is an anti-VEGF-A arm. It's held together by a modified or optimized Fc portion where there's a faster systemic clearance and no effector cell function, meaning that there's decreased inflammation. Again, a very elegantly designed drug in my opinion. So this again neutralizes simultaneously both Ang2 as well as VEGF-A with a single clearance rate. Remember, it's a bispecific drug. There's a robust phase 2 program. The one that pertains to macular degeneration is Avenue and Stairway. The Avenue studies and the Stairway studies have been, they're being published, but they've been presented already. And as far as the Avenue study was concerned, it was shown that there's a tendency towards greater durability. There was no difference even in the Q8 arm by the vision as well as the OCT. But perhaps most encouraging is the Stairway study, which showed that 65% of patients had no active disease and could be extended to Q12 weeks. And based on that, there's a phase 3 program going on with Tanai and Lucerne, and we wait to see the results of this phase 3 study. So it's a terribly exciting time to be in retina. We have lots and lots of drugs that we can look at. What I've shown you today is the phase 3 studies of what I consider to be the next generation of anti-VEGF-A drugs. Think of these 3 different silos as opportunities: better short-term efficacy, better long-term efficacy, as well as better sustainability. Thank you for your attention.
The next presentation will be given